Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Excelsior Charter School's production of The Importance of Being Earnest. We welcome you all, and we just ask that no flash photography. If you'd like to film some, this is one of the shows that you can actually film, but we just ask you to be respectful of those around you. Sit back and enjoy the importance of being earnest.
Did you hear what I was playing, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
Well, I'm sorry for that. Well, for your sake. You see, I don't play accurately. Well, anyone can play accurately, but I play with wonderful expression.
Yes, sir.
Well, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
By the way, Lane, I see that in your book that on Thursday afternoon, when Lord Shorman and Mr. Wood were dining with me, that 8 bottles of champagne are entered as have been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that in a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne?
I have often observed that in married households, champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand and is never of a superior quality.
Oh, good heavens! Is married life so demoralizing as that?
I believe it to be a very pleasant state, sir, but I've had very little experience of it up to the present. I've only been married once. Mr. Ernest Worthing.
Oh, my dear Ernest! What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating, as usual, I see, dear Algy.
I believe it customary in good society to take some refreshments at 5 o'clock. Well, where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself, but when one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
Who are these people you amuse?
Oh, neighbors.
You got nice neighbors in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
Then how immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Well, Shropshire? Ah, yes, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, and how very well that is. However, I'm afraid she won't approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
Oh, my dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. One is almost as bad as the way she flirts with you.
I'm in love with Gwendolyn. I've come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you said you'd come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic about proposing. Why, it is very romantic to be in love, but to get a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. And then, well, the excitement is all gone. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. And if I ever get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact.
I've no doubt about that, my dear Algy. Ooh.
Don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. You know, especially for Aunt Augusta.
But you've been eating them all this time.
Well, that is an entirely different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is too.
Oh, my dear fellow, you need not eat as if you were going to eat it all. You behaved as if you you were already married to her. You are not already married to her, and I don't think you will ever be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, well, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Well, girls don't think it right.
That is nonsense.
Well, it isn't. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. And in the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you'll have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean by Cecily, Algie? I don't know anybody by that name.
Bring me the cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room the last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say that you've had my cigarette case this whole time? I do wish you would have told me. I was writing many frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually penniless.
Well, there's no point in offering a large reward now that the thin is found.
Well, I think that it's rather neat of you, Ernest. However, I must say, now that I look at the inscription, I find that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times, and you have no right to read the inscription inside. It is a very ungentlemanly thing to do, to read a private cigarette case.
It is completely absurd in having a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't read. Why, half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I'm quite aware of that fact, Algie. I simply want my cigar case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily. And you said you don't know anybody of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, charming old lady she is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. For heaven's sake, Algie, give me back my cigarette case.
Yes, but why does your aunt call herself Little Cecily? From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some ants are tall, some ants are not tall. That is absurd. For heaven's sake, Algie, give me back my cigarette case.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. I have no objection to an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle? Well, I just can't quite make it out. Besides, her name isn't Jack at all, it is Ernest.
It isn't Ernest. It is Jack.
But you've always told me it was Ernest. I've introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. Well, you look as if your name was Ernest. Well, you're the most earnest-looking person I've ever saw in my life. It is perfectly absurd you're saying your name isn't Ernest. Well, it is on one of your cards. Here is one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, before the Albany. And I'll keep this as proof if you ever attempt to deny it to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, it is Ernest in town. And Jack in the country. And the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives in Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Well, now go on. Well, tell me the whole thing. I may mention I have always suspected you of being a secret and confirmed Bunburyist. I'm quite certain of the fact now.
Bunburyist? What on earth is a Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to tell me why you were Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Well, here it is. Now produce your explanation, and please, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there's nothing improbable at all about my explanation. In fact, it is perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me, in his will, guardian to his dear granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who calls me her uncle by motives of respect that you cannot possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the esteemed care of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
By the way, where in the country is this place?
That is nothing to you, old boy. You are not going to be invited. I may tell you candidly that the place is not in Shropshire.
I suspected that. You see, I bum-breed all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Well, then go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algy, I don't know whether or not you will be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It is one's duty to do so. And as a very high moral tone can hardly be said to induce one's health or one's happiness. In order to make sure I can get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother by the name of Earnest, who lives in the Albany, who gets into the most dreadful trouble. That, my dear friend, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. You see, what you really are is a bum-breist. Well, I was quite right in saying you are a bum-breist. Well, you are one of the most advanced bum-breists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You see, you have invented a very useful younger brother called Earnest, in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you'd like. I have invented an invaluable invalid called Bunbury, in order that I may be able to go down to the country whenever I choose. You see, Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. And if it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, I wouldn't be able to dine with you Willis's tonight.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know! You are absurdly careless about sending out invitations. It is very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people more than not receiving invitations.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the slightest intention of doing anything of that kind. You see, whenever I do dine there, I am always treated as a member of the family. And, in the second place, I know who she'll place me next to tonight. Most will place me next to Mary Farquhar, who flirts with her husband across the dinner table. And that is not very pleasant. Indeed, it's not even decent. But, well, now that I need to be a confirmed Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunbury. I want to tell you the rules.
I'm not a Bunburyist or anything of the kind. If Gwendolyn accepts my proposal, I'm going to kill my brother. Yes, I do think I will kill my imaginary brother in any case. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. It is rather a bore. So I'm going to get rid of Ernest, and I very much think you should do the same with your with your invalid friend with a ridiculous name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. You see, a man who enters married life without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
That is nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolyn, and she is the only girl I ever saw in my life that I would marry, I won't want to know Bunbury.
Well, then your wife will. Oh, my dear fellow, you don't seem to realize that in married life, well, 3 is company and 2 is none.
Don't be cynical. It is perfectly easy to be cynical.
It isn't perfectly easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about it. Nope. Nope. No. It seems that Thomas Glasgow, thinking of the utmost importance I pay what is indebted to him.
When one collects debts, it is always of utmost importance, Algernon.
Yes, Mr. Glasgow will indeed receive what is indebted to him, when it is important for me to do so. That must be Aunt Augusta. You see, only relations are credited over in that manner. Now, if I get her out of the way for 10 minutes, in order that she may be able to have a chance of proposing, I dine with you at Willis's tonight.
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who aren't serious about me, and it's very shallow of them.
Lady Brown, the Duchess of Haven, Lady Bolton, and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. You remember the Duchess of Haven, I'm sure.
Yes, and how do you do? Oh, Lady Bolton! Oh, it certainly has been some time since seeing you last.
Yes, and how fond I've always been of you, dear Algernon. I hope you're behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, my lady.
I'm afraid that those aren't quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Oh, my dear, you are radiant.
I'm always radiant. Aren't I, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
I hope I'm not that. It would leave no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I apologize if we are a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I hadn't been there since her husband's death. I had never seen a woman look so altered. She looked quite 20 years younger. And now, I will have some tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me. I'm certain there are plenty for your guests.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come sit here, Gwendolyn?
Thanks, Mamma. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Lane! Lane! Why, there are cucumber sandwiches. I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
Thank you, Lane. Aunt Augusta, it pains me deeply to say that there were no cucumbers in the market today.
It really is quite all right, Algernon. We had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
Yes, the poor soul.
No, I've heard her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its color, from what cause I, of course, cannot say. I've quite the treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm sending you down with Mary Farquhar.
Farquhar. Yes, she's such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband.
It's delightful to watch them.
Aunt Augusta, I'm afraid I'll have to give up the pleasures of dining with you tonight.
I should hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs.
You see, I've just received a telegram saying that my poor friend Bunbury has fallen ill again, and they seem to think I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Well, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I think that it is high time that this Bunbury decides whether he should live or die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd, nor do I in any way approve of modern sympathy with invalids.
I consider that quite morbid.
Indeed, illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others.
Health is the primary duty of life. I should be obliged if you were to call on Mr. Bunbury from me, if you would be so kind as to not have a relapse until Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music. One wants something that encourages conversation.
I will talk to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious, and ensure that he is all right by Saturday. However, the music is of great difficulty. You see, if somebody plays good music, well, people don't listen. But if somebody plays bad music, well, people don't talk. But I'll go with the program I've drawn out for you. If you'll kindly step into the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. The program to be quite wonderful. After a few revisions, Gwendolyn, you will accompany us.
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Please don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I feel quite certain that they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
and I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly, until I've often had to speak to her about.
Gwendolyn, ever since I met you, I've admired you more than any other girl in the world I have ever met since I met you.
Yes, I am quite aware of that fact, and I often wish, in public at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Earnest. When Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolyn?
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Earnest.
But you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest.
But your name is Earnest.
Yes, I know it is, but supposing it was something else, do you really mean to say that you couldn't love me then?
That is clearly a metaphysical explanation, and has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I've never much cared for the name of Ernest. I don't think the name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It's a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Really, Gwendolyn, I must say that I think there are other, much more charming names out there, like Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack. No, there is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually ugly. And I pity any woman who was married to a man called Jack. The only really safe name is Earnest.
Gwendolyn, we must be married at once. There's no time to waste.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely. You know that I love you, and, well, you've led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, you're not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but nothing has been said about marriage. You've not proposed to me yet. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity.
Gwendolyn,
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what have you got to say to me?
you know what I've got to say to you?
Yes, but you don't say it.
My own one. I've loved you more than any other girl.
Oh, Ernest, what wonderfully blue eyes you have. They are so, so blue. I hope you will always look at me just like this, especially when other people are present.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course, darling. How long have you been about it? I'm afraid you've had very little experience in how to propose.
Mr. Worthing, rise up from the semi-incumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing has not finished quite yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I'm engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to be married to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I, or your father, will alert you of the fact. It is hardly a matter that a girl should decide for herself. And now, I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will await for me below in the carriage.
Mamma!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn! Gwendolyn, the carriage!
Oh.
Duchess of Haven? Lady Bolton? I will need your assistance. If I had needed your assistance, Algernon, your name would have been included in the address. Please continue working on the music for the program. You may have a seat, Mr. Worthing.
No, thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
The Duchess of Haven, Lady Bolton, and I work together. We are quite ready to seek for answers a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I do smoke.
I'm pleased to hear it.
A man should always have an occupation of some kind.
Yes, there are far too many young men in London as it is.
How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at.
I have always been of opinion that if a man desires to get married, he should either know everything or nothing.
Yes. To which do you know, Mr. Worthing?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I'm not fond of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a rare exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone.
The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes and probably lead to acts of violence and govern square.
What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or investments?
In investments, chiefly.
I am pleased to hear it.
I also have a country house with some land on it, of course. I think 1,500 acres. But that is not at all how I rely for my true income.
A country house? How many bedrooms? Well, that point can easily be cleared up. You have a townhouse, I hope? A
Well,
girl
yes.
with a simple, unspoiled nature should not be expected to reside in the country.
Yes, I have a townhouse in Belgrove Square.
What number in Belgrove Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that can easily be altered.
The fashion of the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
I'm afraid I really have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They dine in with us or come in the evening at any rate.
Now, to personal matters. Are your parents living?
No, I'm afraid I've lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both, however, just looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was obviously a man of some wealth.
I'm afraid I really don't know, Lady Bracknell. I said that I had lost my parents, but it would be closer to the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
Yes, the late Mr. Thomas Cardew, a man of a very kind and charitable disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing because he had a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It's a seaside resort.
And where did this charitable young gentleman with a first-class ticket to a seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, a black, rather large handbag with handles on it. A very ordinary handbag, in fact.
To be born, or at any rate bred in a handbag, seems to display a contempt of the ordinary decencies of family life. And in what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew find this ordinary-looking handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station.
The cloak around Victoria Station.
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. I must say that, Mr. Worthing, I feel somewhat bewildered by what you've just told me.
Then would you kindly advise me what you think I should do, Lady Bracknell? I need hardly say that I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations and to produce at any rate one parent before the season is quite over.
Well, I don't see how I could possibly do that, Lady Bracknell. I can bring you the handbag at any moment. It is in my cloakroom at home. I do think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What has it got to do with me? You could hardly imagine that I or Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a closet and make an alliance with a parcel. Good day, Mr. Worthing.
Good day. For heaven's sake, Algernon, do not play that ghastly tune. How idiotic you are.
Did it go all right, old boy?
Oh, that Lady Blackwood is perfectly unbearable. I have never met such a gorgon. I don't actually know what a gorgon looks like, but I'm quite certain that that woman is one. And in any case, she is a monster. I beg your pardon, Algie. I really shouldn't speak of your own aunt in that way before you.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relations abused. It's the only thing that makes me put up with them at all.
That is nonsense. You don't think that Gwendolyn might become like her mother in about 150 years or so? Do you, Algie?
All women become like their mothers. Well, that is their tragedy. And no man does, and well, that is his. Well, by the way, did you tell Gwendolyn about your being Earnest in town and Jack in the country?
The truth isn't the sort of thing one tells a nice, sweet, refined girl like Gwendolyn. What extraordinary ideas you have about how to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to kiss her if she's pretty, and someone else if she's ugly.
That is nonsense.
What about your brother? What about the reckless Earnest?
Oh, that is all right. I will have said in a week's time that he died in Paris of a severe chill. Yes, my poor brother Ernest was carried off suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
Well, but I thought you said this Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in him.
That is all right. Cecily is a silly, romantic girl, I am sad to say. She takes long walks and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I'd rather like to see Cecily.
I will take very good care that you never do. She is excessively pretty, and she is only 18.
Well, have you told Gwendolyn about your excessively pretty ward who's just 18?
One just doesn't blurt these kind of things out to people. Cecily and Gwendolyn are sure to become great friends. I bet you anything that 30 minutes after they have met, they will be calling each other sister.
Women only call each other sister after they've called each other a lot of other names first.
Miss Fairfax.
Oh, Gwendolyn, upon my word!
Algie, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Well, I hardly think I can allow this.
Algie, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life, and you were not quite old enough to do that.
My own one.
Earnest, we may never be married. From the expression on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. Whatever influence I had when Mamma had lost at the age of 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, nothing she can say can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Dear Gwendolyn.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name of Earnest has an irresistible fascination. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There's a good postal service, I suppose. I'll communicate with you daily.
My own one.
Algie? You may not turn your back right now.
Thank you, I've turned around already.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. You may ring the bell.
You will let me see to your carriage?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
Lane, I hope tomorrow is a wonderful day.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you are the perfect pessimist.
Yes, sir.
There is a sweet, sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl I have ever loved. What on earth are you so amused at?
Oh, nothing. I'm just a little worried about my poor friend Bunbury, that's all.
If you don't take good care, this Bunbury is sure to get you into some great trouble.
My dear boy, I love trouble. It is the only thing that is ever serious.
That is nonsense, Algie. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Oh, nobody ever does.
Mr. Thomas Glasgow.
Mr. Algernon Moncrief, my name is Thomas Glasgow, and at present I currently represent the firm of Chatsworth and Farnsworth. I'm sorry, sir, but I have a writ of attachment against you for £700, 12 shillings from the suite of the Savoy Hotel.
What nonsense. I never dine at the Savoy at my own expense.
In the interest of our clients, sir, I have no option but to take an order for committal of your person.
A committal of my person
For 6 months.
for 6 months.
No doubt you will prefer to pay the bill.
How am I supposed to do that? No gentleman ever has any money.
In my experience, it is usually relations who pay.
Well, it just so happens I was on my way down to the country to visit a dear friend of mine, my brother, actually. He's a very wealthy gentleman who would be more than happy to pay off his poor brother's debts. Well, I shall be returning Monday. You may collect the dues then.
Very well. I shall return Monday and collect, whether it be in the form of money or your person. Good day.
Algie, you and I both know that you have no brother.
That is why my poor friend Bunbury can be anything I want him to be. Just as your brother Ernest. Goodbye, Jack. Lane, tomorrow I'm going Bunburying.
Yes, sir.
I shall not be returning until after Monday. You may collect all my usual things. My dressing clothes, my smoking jacket, and all the Bunburying suits.
Yes, sir.
Cecily, your German grammar is on the table.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. And I know perfectly well that I look quite ugly after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he is so serious that I think he cannot be quite well.
Mr. Worthing enjoys the best of health. His seriousness is to be commended, one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one who has a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that is often why he looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I'm surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality are out of place in this conversation. You must remember that constant anxiety about the unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometime. I think we might be a lot of good for him. I'm sure you certainly would, Miss Prism. You know things like German and geology, and things of that kind tend to influence a man very much.
I do not think that even I could produce any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irreversible. Indeed, I'm not sure I would desire to reform him. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I really do not see why you should keep one at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles things that have not happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels.
Do not speak slightingly of 3-volume novels, Cecily. I wrote them myself in my earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so. It seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
No, I'm afraid it was deserted. I use the term in the sense of lost and mislaid. To your work, child. These speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
How are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I hope, well.
Actually, Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a short stroll with you in the park.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
Oh, yes, I know that, Miss Prism. But I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking of that and not my German lesson when the rector came in.
Cecily, I hope you're not being inattentive.
Oh, I am afraid I am.
That's so strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from bees. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, did not return from town yet.
We do not expect him till Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes. He usually likes to spend his Sundays in London. He's not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as by all accounts that unfortunate young man his brother seems to be. But alas, I will not intrude on dear Cupid's time any longer.
Cupid, my name is Letitia, dear doctor.
A classical illusion merely drawn from the romantic arts. I shall see you both, no doubt, at evening.
I think, dear doctor, I will have a stroll with you. I find I have a headache after all, and a walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism. With pleasure. We might even stroll to the schools and back.
Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence.
Horrid political economy. Horrid geology. And horrid German.
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station. He has got his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing. Before the Albany. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Uncle Jack was in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He was very anxious to speak with you privately for a moment.
Tell him to come here. And I'm sure you better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I have never really met any wicked person. I feel rather afraid. I am so frightened he will just look like everyone else.
He does! You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
I believe you are under some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I am more than usually tall for my age. But yes, I am your cousin Cecily. And you, I see from your card, are my cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, Cousin Cecily, you mustn't think I'm wicked.
Oh, but you have certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been pretending to be wicked, while really being good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Well, I have been rather reckless.
I am glad to hear it.
And, well, now that you mention the subject, I have been very bad in a small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that, though I'm sure it was very pleasant.
It is much more pleasant being here with you.
I can't understand how you are here at all. Uncle Jack will be back till Monday afternoon.
That is a great disappointment. You see, I'm to go by the first train on Monday morning.
I think you had better wait till Uncle Jack arrives. I'm sure he would like to speak to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
Your emigrating. He's gone up to buy your outfit.
I certainly won't let Jack buy my outfits. There's no taste in neckties.
I don't think you require neckties where you're going. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Uncle Jack said at dinner Wednesday night you'd have to choose between this world, the next, and Australia.
Well, the accounts I've received of the next world in Australia are not particularly encouraging, but this world is good enough for me.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
Well, I'm afraid I'm not that, Cousin Cecily. That is why I want you to reform me. Well, you might make me your mission.
I'm afraid I have no time this afternoon.
Then would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
That's rather impossible, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You are looking a little worse.
That is because I'm hungry.
Oh! How silly of me. I forgot that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, they require regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in and help?
Well, thank you. But might I have a buttonhole first? I can hardly have an appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
A peony?
Let's enter a pink rose.
Why?
Well, because you are like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I don't think it could be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Well, then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. Oh, the prettiest thing I've ever seen.
Miss Prism says all good looks are a snare.
Well, they're a snare. Every sensible man would like to find himself caught in.
I don't think I would like to catch a sensible man. I wouldn't know what to talk to him about.
You are too much alone, dear Dr. Chasuble. You should get married.
Believe me, I do not deserve so many logistic affairs. The practice as well as the precept of the primitive church was distinctively against matrimony.
That is obviously why the primitive church hasn't lasted up to the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear Doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation.
But is a man not as equally attractive as when he is married?
No man is ever attractive except to his wife.
Often I've been told not even her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of a woman. Maturity can always be depended on. Young women are too green. I spoke more metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. But where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing?
Mr. Worthing?
I've returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope you're well.
I hope this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagance.
Or still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead.
Your brother Ernest dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
Mr. Worthing, you have my most sincere condolences. You have at least the consolation of knowing you were always the most forgiving and generous of brothers.
Oh, my poor Ernest. He had many faults, but this is a sad, sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you there at the end?
No, he seemed to have died abroad. In Paris. I received a telegram last night from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity, Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am specifically susceptible to weakness. Mr. Wood, you will no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. I've preached it at harvest celebrations, confirmations, and christenings.
Oh, that reminds me. You mentioned christenings, didn't you? So you know how to christen. I mean, of course, you're continually christening, aren't you?
But is there any particular infant in whom you're interested in, Mr. Will?
No, actually, I would like to be christened myself this afternoon, if you have nothing better to do.
Certainly you've been christened already, Mr. Will.
I don't remember anything about it.
Well, have any grave doubts on the subject?
I certainly intend to have, but I won't make you do it if it would offend you in any way, or if you think I'm a little too old now.
No, not at all. The sprinkling, as well as the immersion of adults, is a perfectly canonical practice.
Perfectly. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably. And now, Mr. Worthing, I will no longer intrude into a house of sorrow. I would only beg of you not to be bowed down by grief for too much longer. What seems to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of the extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I am so pleased to see you back. Oh, what horrid clothes you have got on. Do go and change them.
Cecily!
My child!
What is the matter, Uncle Jack? You look as if you have a toothache. And have I got such a surprise for you? Who do you think is in the courtyard? Your brother.
Who?
Your brother, Ernest. He arrived about half an hour ago.
That's nonsense. I haven't got a brother. Well,
Uncle Jack, do be nice. No matter how badly he may behave to you in the past, can you be so harmless as to disown him? I will tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
Cecily.
Well, these are very joyful tidings.
After we all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to be particularly distressing.
My brother Ernest is here? I don't know what it all means. I think it's perfectly absurd.
Brother Jack!
Oh, good heavens.
Oh, Brother Jack! I've come down from town to tell you that I am very sorry for any trouble I've given you in the past, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you aren't going to refuse your own brother's hand?
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think he's coming down here disgraceful. He knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone. Dear Ernest here has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend Mr. Bumbery, who he goes to visit so often. And surely there must be some good in someone who leaves the pleasures of London to sit beside a bed of pain.
Oh, he's been talking about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, Mr. Bumbery in his terrible state of health.
Bunbury! Well, I won't allow him to talk to you about Bunbury or anything else. It is enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Well, I do admit the faults were on my side. Well, I find Brother Jack's coldness towards me is particularly painful. Well, I expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially since it's the first time I've been here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with your brother, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me.
Never? Never? Never.
Then this is the last time I shall ever do it.
I think we should leave the two brothers together.
Cecily will come with us.
Certainly. My little task of reconciliation is over.
We must not be premature in our judgments.
Beautiful, isn't it? To see so perfect a reconciliation.
I feel rather happy.
Algernon! You young scoundrel! You've got to leave at once. I don't allow any conjuring here.
I think Mr. Earnest will things in the room next to yours, sir. I suppose that's all right.
What?
His luggage, sir. I have unpacked it and placed it into the room next to your own.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3-foot bundle, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can't stay more than a week this time.
Merriman, order the dog cart at once.
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Earnest has been suddenly called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I've not been called up to town.
Oh, yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in the slightest degree.
Well, I can quite see that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
You're not to speak of Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. It is completely childish to be mourning somebody who's actually staying with you as a guest in your house for an entire week.
You're not going to be staying with me as a guest or anything else. You've got to leave by the 4:05 train.
Well, I certainly couldn't leave you. Well, especially while you were in mourning. You see, if I was in mourning, I think you'd stay with me. I think it most unkind if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you're not too long. I've never seen somebody take so long to dress with such little results.
Well, that is better than being constantly overdressed as you are.
If I'm occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by being immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct an outrage, and your very presence in my garden utterly absurd. Still, you've got to leave by the 4:05 train, and I hope you have a pleasant journey back to town. This thundering, as you call it, has not worked out for you. Dear Mr. Thomas Glasgow, Mr. Algernon Moncrief, the debts you require. This letter is of utmost importance. Please make sure it reaches a Mr. Thomas Glasgow at the firm of Chatsworth and Farnsworth. Please do so immediately.
Yes, sir. Right away, sir.
after me. Well, I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But still, I must make arrangements to see her before I go, and start another bungalow. Oh, here she is.
Oh, I nearly came back too. What are the flowers? I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Is he taking you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Then have we got to part?
I'm afraid so. And what a painful parting it is.
There's always painful parting from one when one is known such a short amount of time.
Knock at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
Cecily, I don't mean to offend you in stating quite openly and frankly that you are in every way the most visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you a great credit. Now, if you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Well, do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it, may I?
Oh, no. It is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. But please go on, Ernest. I delight in taking down from dictation. I believe I've reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I am quite ready for more. Oh, don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell cough.
Cecily, ever since I've met you, well, I have dared to love you, wildly and passionately, and hopelessly and devotedly.
Please go on.
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
We'll tell her to come around next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed to know you're staying on till next week at the same hour.
But I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anyone in the whole world. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
You silly boy. Of course I will. Why, we've been engaged for the last 3 months.
3 months?
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
And how exactly did we become engaged?
Well, ever since Uncle Jack first confessed that he had a younger brother who was very wicked, you have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And of course, when a man is much talked about, he is always very attractive. I dare say it was foolish of me, Ernest, but I fell in love with you.
Oh, darling. And when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February. Oh, and here's the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
But my dear, I've never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that. I remember all too well I was forced to write your letters for you. I always wrote 3 times a week, and sometimes oftener.
May I read them?
Oh, no. It would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote me after I had broken off our engagement is so beautifully written, and so badly spelled. I can hardly read them without crying a little.
Was the engagement ever broken off?
Yes, on the 22nd of March. Oh, you can read the entry if you'd like. Today I broke off my engagement with Earnest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather continues charming.
Well, why would you break off our engagement? What did I have done nothing. Pains me deeply to hear that you broke off our engagement, Cecily. Especially when the weather was so charming.
My dear boy, it would have hardly been a serious engagement if it had been broken off at least once. Besides, I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
Your hair. It grows naturally, does it not?
Yes, with a little help from others.
I'm glad to hear it.
Cecily, you'll never break off our engagement again, will you?
I don't think I could now that I've actually met you. Besides, there
First, the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You mustn't laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love a man with the name of Earnest. Why, the name alone inspires one with absolute credulity. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Earnest.
Well, do you mean to say that, well, you couldn't love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Well, any name you'd like. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
Well, my dear, sweet, loving Cecily, well, I really can't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. I think it is a rather aristocratic name. But seriously, Cecily, do you mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name was Algie?
I might respect you. I might admire your character. But I'm afraid I cannot give you my full undivided attention.
Well, Cecily, your reverend here is thoroughly experienced in all these ceremonies and rites of the church.
Yes, he is a most learned man. He has never written a single book, so I'm sure you can imagine how much he knows.
Well, then I must see him on the most important christening. On most important business.
Oh,
I shan't be away more than half an hour.
couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
Well, I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much.
Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business at States.
Is it Mr. Worthing in his library?
No, he went over to the director of the church some time ago.
Tell the lady to come here. I'm sure Mr. Worthing will be back soon. Oh, and you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Today, my dear boy Ernest came to visit me. And like the silly man he is, he proposed for the second time. The weather continues charming.
Miss Fairfax.
Allow me to introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew, what a very sweet name. Something tells me we are going to be great friends. I like you a little more than I can say, and my first impressions of you are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much. Only after knowing me such a short amount of time. Please sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Cecily, Mamma's views on education are remarkably strict, and she felt me up to be extremely short-sighted. So, do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Not at all, Gwendolyn. In fact, I am very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose?
Oh, no. I live here. My guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
He never mentioned her ward. How secretive of him. Cecily, I am bound to state, now I know you are Mr. Worthing's ward. I can't help expressing a wish you were, well, a little older than you appear to be, and not so quite very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly...
Oh, please do so. I think whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, they should be perfectly candid.
I will speak of perfect candor, Cecily. I wish you were full 42 and more than usually ugly for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honour. His loyalty will be as impossible to him as deception.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn, did you say Ernest?
Yes.
It is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my ward. It is his brother, his elder brother.
He never mentioned a brother. Look, quite sure it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian.
Quite sure. In fact, I am going to be his.
I beg your pardon.
My sweet Gwendolyn, Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married. My darling
Cecily, I fear there must be some error, for Ernest is engaged to be married to me.
But Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious, for Ernest proposed to me yesterday afternoon at exactly 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, please do so. I am so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but it appears I have the prior claim.
Dear Gwendolyn, I feel bound to point out that since then, Ernest has obviously changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him with a firm hand.
Whatever entanglement my dear boy may have gotten himself into.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you assume, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? When it comes to wearing Michelle Amaska manners, there is no time. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I'm glad to say I have never seen a spade. It is obvious our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall we continue as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh, yes, a great many. The top of the hill's quite close. One can see 5 counties.
5 counties! I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here as people are in London.
Personally, I cannot understand how anybody exists in the country, as anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you. Detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays.
Turn that to Miss Fairfax, please.
Yes, miss.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar. And though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, dear, trusting boy from the bewitching of any other girl, there are no legs to which I can now go.
The moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I thought you were false and deceitful.
It seems to be, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Gwendolyn, darling.
A moment! May I ask, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To sweet little Cecily? No, of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I figured there must have been some error. The gentleman whose arm is at present round your waist is my guardian, Mr. Jack Worthing.
I beg your pardon.
This is Uncle Jack. Jack.
Jack! Oh!
And here is Ernest. A moment, Ernest. Are you engaged to be married to this
what young woman? Good heavens, Gwendolyn!
Yes, to good heavens. I'm to Gwendolyn.
Of course not. Who could have put such an idea into a pretty little head?
Thank you. You may. I felt there was some Earnest called you. For the gentleman who's now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon?
Algernon Moncrief? Oh! Are you really called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Oh! Are you really called Jack?
I could deny that I liked. I can deny anything that I liked. But it certainly is Jack. And it's been Jack for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on both of us. My poor wilted Cecily, my sweet Aunt Gwendolyn. You will call me sister, will you not? A moment. There's just one thing I would like to be permitted to ask my guardians. An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is of some importance that we know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. It is the first time in my life I have ever been reduced to such a painful position, and I'm quite inexperienced in that. But I will tell you quite frankly that I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother at all, in fact. And I've never had a brother. And I certainly have not the smallest intention on ever having a brother.
No brother at all?
None.
Had you never had one? Not even of any kind?
Never. Not even of any kind.
It appears to me, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone. This seems so. It is not a very pleasurable position for any young girl to find herself in, though, is it? No. Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No. Men are such cowards, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things is what you call Bunbury, I suppose.
Yes, and what a wonderful Bunbury it is.
Well, you have no right to Bunbury here.
A man has a right to Bunbury wherever he chooses. Any serious Bunbury knows that.
Serious Bunbury. Good heavens.
Well, one must be serious about something if he wants any amusement in life. What you're serious about, I haven't the slightest.
The only small satisfaction I'm taking out of the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to run down to the country quite so often as you used to, dear Algie. A very good thing, too.
And your brother's a little dead now, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to run up to town as often as your wicked custom once was, and what a good thing that is, too.
And as for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I think you're taking in a sweet, innocent, simple girl like that is quite inexcusable. Nonetheless, the fact that she is my ward.
And what defense do you have of taking in a smart, intelligent, thoroughly experienced woman like Miss Fairfax is completely disgraceful? Not to mention the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolyn. That is all. I love her.
I wanted to be engaged to Cecily. That is all. I adore her.
Well, there's certainly no chance you're going to be married Miss Carter.
I don't see a chance of you and Miss Fairfax being united either, Jack.
Well, that is no business of yours. How? How can you sit there, calmly eating muffins when we are in this dreadful business I can't make out? You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner.
I say it's
The butter would probably get on my cuffs. One must only eat muffins in a calm manner.
I say it's perfectly heartless you're eating them at all under the circumstances.
As anyone who knows me intimately, Jack, knows that whenever I'm in great trouble, I refuse everything except food and drink. At the moment I'm eating muffins because I'm unhappy. Besides, I'm particularly fond of muffins.
Well, there's no point in you eating them all in that greedy way.
I wish we'd have the tea cake instead. I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens, I suppose a man made his own muffins in his own garden.
I thought you said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins in the first place.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you, under the circumstances. That is a very different thing.
Algie, I wish to goodness you would go. Well, I couldn't go. Well, I haven't had my dinner yet. Nobody ever goes without their dinner. Except vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I just made arrangements with Dr. Chaswell to be christened this afternoon under the name of Earnest.
That is absurd. The sooner you get that absurd thing, the better. I've already made arrangements to be christened by Dr. Chaswell today at 5:30. And I will naturally take the name of Earnest. Gwendolyn would wish it. We can't both be christened Earnest. It is absurd. Besides, I have every right to be christened. It is entirely different in your case. You have been christened already.
Yes, but I haven't been christened in years. Jack, we're at the muffins again! I wish you would have the tea cake. I already told you I don't like tea cake.
But I hate tea cake.
Then why on earth do you allow it to be served to a guest? What ideas have you of hospitality?
Algernon, I've already told you to go. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
Well, I haven't finished my tea yet, have I? Besides, there's still one muffin left.
The fact that they did not follow us out into the house at once, as anyone else would have, seems to me to show that they have sensitive children.
They seem to be eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They're not even looking at us. Couldn't you call?
But I haven't got a call.
They're looking at us. What effrontery! Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly. It's the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, I've been very particular to ask you. What depends on your reply.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable.
Mr. Moncrief,
Kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
Well, in order that I might have a chance of meeting you.
His answer seems satisfactory, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't. But that doesn't take away from the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True, in matters of grave importance, style and sincerity is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer to me for why you pretended to have a brother? Was it in order that you might have an opportunity of coming up to town to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. The explanation seems satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrief had to say. His voice alone inspires one with absolute confidence.
You think we should forgive them?
Yes.
I mean, no. True. I have forgotten. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which one of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Should we both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea! I nearly always speak the same time as people. Will you take the time for me?
Certainly.
Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? But we're going to be christened this afternoon!
For my sake, you're prepared to do this terrible thing.
I am.
To please me, you are willing to undergo this fearful ordeal of christening?
I am.
How absurd to talk of the equality of the sexes, where questions of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are infinitely beyond us.
They have moments of physical courage of which we would know absolutely nothing.
Will you please come down?
Good heavens, Lady Bracknell.
Gwendolyn, what does this mean? Merely that I am engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here.
Sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young, of physical weakness in the old. Of course, you, sir, will understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately. On this point, as all points, I am firm.
I'm engaged to be married to Gwendolyn, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now as regards. Algernon! Algernon!
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
May I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
Bunbury? No, Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury lives somewhere else. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
I killed Bunbury this afternoon. Bunbury died this afternoon.
Well, what did he die of?
Bunbury? Bunbury was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he the victim of an evolutionary outrage? I was unaware that Mr. Bunbury was involved in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
My dear Aunt Augusta, I simply meant that, well, Bunbury was found out. The doctors found out that Bunbury could not live, and so Bunbury died.
He seems to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. I am glad, however, that he has taken proper medical advice. And now, may I ask, Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to me a most unnecessary manner?
That is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I'm engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married.
I don't know whether there's anything particularly exciting in the air, but the number of engagements that go on seem to me considerably above the average that statistics have laid out before us. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all related to any of the larger railway stations in London? Mother, I merely desire information. Up until yesterday, I had no idea that there were any families or persons whose origin was a railway station. Gwendolyn? The time approaches for our departure. We've not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I had better ask if Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
Just about £130,000 in the funds. That is all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. £130,000? And in funds. Miss Cardew seems to me a most attractive young lady now that I look at her.
Bring some refreshments out from my guests. Lady Bracknell seems to want to stay a little while longer.
Yes, sir.
And bring some muffins for Algernon.
Yes, sir.
Come over here, dear. Pretty child, your dress is sadly simple, and your hair almost as nature might have left it. But we can soon alter all that. Turn around for me, dear. No, the side view is what I want. Yes, just as expected. There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile. The chin a little higher, dear? Style largely depends upon the way the chin is worn. They are worn high, just at present. Algernon.
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Oh, Cecily is the dearest, most sweetest girl in the whole world. And I don't care a tuppence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. My dear, you must be quite aware that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend upon. However, I suppose I must give my consent.
Well, thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, You may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may also refer to me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The wedding had better take place quite soon. To be frank, I am not fond of long engagements.
I beg your pardon for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell, but I'm afraid this engagement is quite out of the question. See, I'm Cecily's guardian, and she should not be married without my consent until she comes of legal age. That consent, I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is a very, I may almost say extremely eligible young man. He has nothing, in fact. He's poor as dirt. But he looks everything. What more can one desire?
It pains me very much to have to speak frankly to you, Lady Bracknell, about your nephew. But I don't approve at all of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? Impossible.
I fear there can be no possible doubt about the matter. During my temporary absence in London, he made admission into my house under the false pretense of being my brother. Even though he knew well from the fact that I have no brother, that I have never had a brother, and that I do not intend on having a brother. Not even of any kind. And he subsequently stayed for tea and devoured every last muffin. I decline to give my consent.
Come over here, dear. How old are you?
Well, I am really only 18, but I always commit to 20 at evening parties.
Good heavens. 20?
You are perfectly in the right of making the decision for yourself. 18, but admitting to 20 at evening parties? I don't think your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of any importance.
Well, it is only fair to tell you, Lady Bracknell, that according to her grandfather's will, Cecily does not come of legal age till she turns 35.
That is not a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age.
Yes, and I've been 35 for the last 25 years.
Algie, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Well, of course I could. You know I could.
Yes, I thought so instinctively. But I'm afraid I cannot wait till that time. I hate waiting. Even 5 minutes for anybody makes me rather cross. And waiting, even for marriage, is quite out of the question.
Well, then what is to be done?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
My dear Mr. Worthing, Miss Cardew states that she simply cannot wait until she is 35. I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
Oh, but my dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolyn, I will gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be quite aware that what you propose is out of the question.
That a passionate celibacy is all that any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny that I desire for Gwendolyn. Algernon, of course, can choose for himself.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christenings? Is that not somewhat premature?
Well, both of these men have expressed a desire for an immediate baptism.
At their age? The idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you from being christened. I will not hear of such excess.
Am I to understand then that there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
It appears that, as things are now, it would be little use to either of us, Dr. Chasuble.
Dr. Chasuble, this person's been waiting for you in the church for the last hour and a half.
I will then return to the church at once. In fact, I've just been informed by Merriman that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been there with you.
Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Well, yes, Lady Bracknell. On my way to go see her now.
Allow me to detain you for a moment. Is this Miss Prism a female at all related to education?
She is the most cultivating of ladies, and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I'm celibate, madam.
Miss Prism has been for the last 3 years Cecily's esteemed governess and valued companion.
Despite from what I hear, I must see her immediately. Let her be sent for at once.
Miss Prism.
I was told you wanted to see me in the vestry, dear doctor. I've been waiting there for an hour and 3/4.
You were told to wait for me.
Yes, dear doctor.
Prism! Prism, get back here! Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, you left Lord Bracknell's house in charge of an infant carriage that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A week later, upon the investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the infant carriage was discovered in a remote corner by Bayswater, containing the manuscript of a 3-volume novel which had the most revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell will admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the day that you mentioned, I prepared to take the baby out in the infant carriage. I had also with me a somewhat large but capacious black handbag, in which I intended to place the manuscript of a novel I'd written in my few unoccupied hours. Under a moment of mental abstraction of which I can never forgive myself, I placed the manuscript in the bassinet and the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit that handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthman.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing where you deposited that infant.
One of the larger railway stations in London.
Which railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
You will excuse me. I need to go to my room for a moment. Gwendolyn, you will wait for me.
You are not too long, I'll wait my whole life.
What does this mean, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect Dr. Chasper.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Well, your uncle has a very emotional nature.
The noise is most horrendous.
It stopped.
I do hope we reach some conclusion.
The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Is this the handbag, Miss Prism? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
Yes, it appears to be mine. Here on the line is a stain from a 10th-inch damage that occurred at Leamington. And here on the lock are my initials. I had forgotten in the mood of extravagance I'd had them placed there. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I'm so thankful to have it unexpectedly restored to me. It's been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Miss Prism, more has been restored to you than just this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes, Mother.
Mr. Worthing, I'm unmarried.
Unmarried? I do not deny that this is a serious blow. But why should we cast a stone against one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, you are under some grave error. I am not your mother. I am a simpleton with a regretful past. And now that things have played out in this most unfortunate manner, I'm afraid I must resign as Miss Cardew's tutor.
Miss Prism, that is an absurd thing to say. I will not allow
Yes, Miss Prism, you cannot go, especially now it has been revealed you are Uncle Jack's non-mother.
Cecily, my dear child, I'm afraid I have caused a great inconvenience to your guardian, and I must resign.
it. Miss Prism, you must not leave.
Miss Prism! I must confess, I've always disagreed with the practice of the primitive church about celibacy. I wish to end that most distasteful practice and ask for your hand.
Oh, Frederick.
I hate to break up such a lovely affair, but we must clear up the facts of the recent time events.
There is the woman who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly inform me who I am?
I'm afraid that the news I have might not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's older brother.
Are you quite certain? Then I have a brother after all. Oh, I always knew I had a brother. I always said I had a brother. Cecily, how could you have doubted me when I said I had a brother? Oh, Dr. Chasel, my poor, unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my poor, unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my poor, unfortunate brother. Oh, Algernon! You have never treated me like a brother once in all your life. You've got to treat me with more respect from now on.
Well, I do admit I did try my hardest. Or I thought I was out of practice.
Mr. Glasgow, sir.
Mr. Algernon Moncrief. Whoa!
Who is this gentleman?
That is Mr. Thomas Glasgow. He has come to order a committal of Algie.
A committal? What on earth for?
Mr. Moncrief has fled the city in order to clear up excessive debt he has with our client. My lady, because of this criminal behavior, I must order this committal at once.
Algernon, get up off the floor. It is most improper to be laying down at a time such as this.
I apologize for breaking up an unusual family meeting, but time presses. We must be at Holloway no later than 4 o'clock to obtain a proper cell for Mr. Moncrief.
Holloway, I don't understand, dear Algie.
Unhand me this instant! I will not be arrested for something that can be cleared quite easily. Oh, my dear brother.
I'm afraid it is too late for help, sir. One must be punished for their deplorable behavior. Release Mr. Moncrief at once. It is I who is responsible for Mr. Glasgow's presence and the apprehension of Algie. I informed Mr. Glasgow of Algie's whereabouts in order to protect my dear Cecily, my own irrational inconstancy with fictitious Earnest. I agree to settle my brother's accounts, but after all, he is my brother. Please make sure that Mr. Glasgow has received all that is due to him.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good day.
What a most charitable thing to do for, especially a man in his own brother.
My own!
I am! Who are you? What is your Christian name now you've become someone else?
Good heavens. Quite forgotten that fact. Your opinion on the subject of my name remains irrevocable, I suppose.
I never change except in my affection.
What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Then the matter better be cleared up once. Aunt Augusta, a moment. Before Miss Prism had placed me in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy was lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
And I was christened, that is certain. And what name was I given? I am prepared for the worst.
Being the eldest son, naturally you were christened under your father.
Well, yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot at the moment recall what the general's name was, but I have no doubt that he had one. He was very eccentric, but only in the later years.
Algie, can't you remember what our father's Christian name was?
Oh, my dear boy, we were hardly on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
His name would appear in the army list at the time, I suppose, Aunt Augusta.
The general was essentially a man of peace, but I have no doubt that his name would appear in the military directory.
The military list of the last 30 years are here. These records should have been my constant study. And Malum, Magsbaum, Miggs, Lee. Ugh, what ghastly names do they have? More M's. Moncrief, Lieutenant Colonel, General 1869. Christian name, I always said my name was Earnest, didn't I, Gwendolyn? Well, it is actually Earnest. I mean, it is naturally Earnest.
Ah, yes, the general's name was Ernest. I remember now why I had a particular dislike for the name.
Ernest, my own Ernest. I felt from the first you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, it is a very terrible thing for a man to find out that for all his life, he's been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you ever forgive me?
I can, for I feel you're shortchanged.
My own one.
Patrick.
Cecily.
Gwendolyn, at last, I now realize for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.